Hello! Today we will be talking about domestic abuse, what it is, and how to identify it. This will include some general information about domestic abuse, statistics, the history of domestic abuse, how to try and help someone who's in an abusive situation, among other information. Domestic violence is defined as any form of maltreatment that takes place in a heterosexual or homosexual romantic relationship between adults or adolescents. This means that domestic violence can occur in any relationship, and age is not a factor. Women are more likely than men to experience abuse. This is not universally true, but in general, women are more likely than men to experience abuse, and there's a large discrepancy between women that experience abuse and men that experience abuse. This could be because women have historically been oppressed and have only in recent decades started to take back their rights in places in the workplace. Cultural influences unintentionally support domestic abuse, such as entertainment that glorifies relationship violence. For example, have you ever seen a movie where a man and a woman are fighting, whether they're yelling at each other, or he ends the argument by hitting her, and it seems like just a couple minutes later, they kiss and make up? That is an example of a movie that glorifies relationship violence. Another is rape pornography, among other things, such as music videos, which often overly sexualize women. It is not confined to one ethnicity, race, age, religious, or socioeconomic factor. So, like I said earlier, domestic abuse can occur in any relationship, regardless of where it is in the world, or if the couple is straight or homosexual. Now for some statistics. 20 people per minute are abused by a romantic partner in the United States. To put this into perspective, 20 people per minute is 1,200 people an hour, and 28,800 people a day. That's a lot of people in a given day. 1 in 4 women have been victims of extreme violence. In other words, that's 25% of all women. Domestic violence accounts for 15% of all crime. This is encompassing all the other types of crime, such as murder, burglary, or drinking under the influence. It accounts for 15% of all crime. 60.8% of stalking victims who are women report being stalked by an ex. And 19% of all domestic abuse involves a weapon. Now, for the history of domestic abuse. In the 1970s, wife beating was common and not considered a crime. This could be because in that time period, women were only beginning to take back their rights. So it's still common for her to be the one taking care of the home and just be the homemaker. The beginning cannot be narrowed down to one time period because it's one of the longest occurring crimes. We see domestic abuse in time periods as varied as ancient Greece to the medieval times to modern day. So it has been going on for basically as long as humans have existed. It used to be viewed as a form of punishment for wives who were misbehaving or had improper home conduct. So again, before women were more than just the people who raised the children and took care of the home. Women just had to behave in a certain way in the home, and if she didn't behave properly, then her husband could punish her with wife beating. Domestic violence was commonly present in the ancient world. St. Augustine recalled in times of his mother being beaten by his father. And Tennessee was the first state to prohibit husbands from beating their wives. It was outlawed in 1850. This is interesting to me because the outlawing of domestic abuse occurred a lot earlier than I thought it would. And also, and I don't consider Tennessee a very liberal state, so to see that Tennessee was the first state to outlaw domestic abuse is interesting to me. Now for domestic abuse in modern day. While domestic violence is still prevalent in today's society, it is not as widely accepted as it used to be. Again, this could be, as I mentioned earlier, maybe because women have been reclaiming their rights and reaffirming that they are equal to men. So this could be a reason why domestic violence is still around, but isn't as accepted as it was in the past. According to the New York Times, domestic abuse has risen during the COVID-19 pandemic. This could be because of the pandemic, more people have been staying home, so it's been easier to run into instances where domestic abuse might occur, because like when both parties are in the house at the same time, there might be more times for abuse to occur. More people are coming forward and speaking on their experiences with abusers. This includes activists and other people who are just coming forward and telling their stories on the experience they've had with domestic abuse. This also helps to make it not as accepted in society, because by these people coming forward, they're saying that, like, obviously they don't like it and they want it to stop. The Violence Against Women Act, which was passed in 1994, made domestic violence crimes a felony. This one's kind of shocking to me, because if you think about it, only a little over 20 years ago was domestic violence made a really serious crime. So it may have been outlawed before then, but before 1994, it was not a felony. 38 states have domestic violence laws. So that means in 12 states, there are not any laws to try and prevent domestic abuse. In 12 laws, it might be a crime, but there are not any specific laws outlawing it. Now let's talk about some global domestic abuse resources. The End Violence Against Women International is a fundraising organization with the goal to end domestic abuse. It also provides courses on how to help abuse victims and recognizing abusive relationships. This one seems really helpful to me because not only does it give information about domestic abuse, but it also provides courses on how to help someone who's in an abusive situation. There's also Love the Respect, which is a hotline geared towards teenagers. It gives a lot of information on what healthy relationships look like and how to be safe. With teenagers, often they're going through their first relationship and they might not know what a healthy relationship looks like. So this is a good resource to me because not only is it specifically for teenagers, but it also gives information on healthy versus unhealthy relationships for teenagers who might not know. There's also the Battered Women's Justice Project, which is a nonprofit organization devoted to spreading information about domestic violence. From looking at their website, I don't know if they have any shelters or hotlines, but I'm sure that they're connected to some if they do not have any themselves. Some local domestic abuse resources, so like in the Ann Arbor area, are Safe House Center, a shelter for abuse victims located in Ann Arbor. It also has a hotline for victims still in an abusive situation. So this is a shelter specifically for abuse victims. There aren't many shelters like this. There's also the Shelter Association of Washtenaw County, another shelter, but not specifically for abuse victims. Their primary focus is helping the homeless, but can be good for victims who have escaped. Like I said earlier, Safe House Center is the only resource that really has a shelter specifically for abuse victims. The Shelter Association of Washtenaw County is mostly for the homeless, but it can be a good alternative for people who have escaped an abusive situation and don't have anywhere else to go. There's also Alternatives to Domestic Aggression, a page on the Catholic Social Services of Washtenaw County website. This provides a hotline and information for an in-person course that gives healthy alternatives to aggression. This is also a good resource because not only does it give information about domestic abuse, but if like you are an abuser and you want to change your ways, it has an in-person course that gives you healthy alternatives to lashing out at someone or abusing someone. So this could be good if you know that you're mistreating someone.